I type it wrong? Okay.
Okay.
I can't see.
Let's sit down for that. Yeah, it's hard with this thing.
That didn't seem live.
Now you're live. Good to go.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Rogers, Chair of the Appropriations Committee. I'd like to call the Appropriations Committee for February 24th, 2026 to order at 6:08 p.m. This meeting is being conducted as a hybrid meeting in accordance with the provisions of the open meeting law. It's being streamed live and recorded. Because we have remote participants, all votes taken this evening will be by roll call. Before we begin, I will state the members of the Appropriations Committee who are present in the room and those participating remotely. For remote participants, I'll confirm that you can hear and be heard. Jeff Knight, here. George Brinkle, here. Tim Kalin,
Here.
and Mona Wallace.
Here.
And Terry may join us in progress. He's traveling at the moment. First item we have, as always, public comment. If there's anybody here in the room who'd like to comment, raise a hand. If there's anybody online in the meeting, use the react feature and raise a hand to be recognized. Seeing none, we'll move to the next order of business, which is approval of meeting minutes for February 10th. Is there a motion?
Move that we approve the meeting minutes from February 10th.
Second. Thank you, George. Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Mona?
Aye.
At this meeting, I will remember to vote myself. So that was also last meeting. I have to include myself. All right. Main order of business tonight is to hear the fire department budget request. And my apologies again, Steph and Jason, I did not recognize your attendance first. So let me also recognize that here we have for staff, we have town administrator Steph Bacon, finance director Jason Little, and deputy police chief. Let's be seen.
Good. Chief Ferranti is still off, so lucky me, I get to take the torch and jump right in. So Jason put together, Jason and I put together that little summary there, but I'm gonna kind of go over a couple of different things first, give an idea of the fire department. As we kind of learned some lessons, and I think it's an industry-wide issue. Where we're not very good at writing ourselves and explaining to what people with the fire department actually do. And it was evident in one of the comments at town meeting where it really struck me that, they would rather invest in organizations that, prevent things from happening versus than respond. And we really are a prevention industry. I just think we don't sell it. It's easy to recognize us when we're out doing the other stuff, so. But with that, I'm gonna start out with what we actually do. So we've been really pushing, getting information out to the public and stuff. So there's a bunch of stuff on our website. I have a form here that has a bunch of QR codes if you want to read it. It's the same stuff that I had distributed to all the boards way back when, but sometimes I tend to write a lot, so you just have to throw it into Google Chat or something and summarize it, but can't say you didn't get the info, right? So some of our responsibilities, so our main headings, we have administration department, our response and operations, emergency medical services, ambulance, community risk reduction, which is kind of like a whole hazard prevention, training, professional development, logistics readiness, and emergency management. I mean, we're kind of just that all organization. Everything with ourselves, administration, obviously we do everything from budgeting, finance and leadership, but we do our own human resources internally. Under the provisions in the fire chief, strong chief in the town charter, everything goes discipline and whatnot goes to the fire chief, so everything gets in-house policies and procedures for that. We deal with our own legal and risk aspects. We do coordinate with the town administrator and town council, as need be, and labor council. Our own health and safety, we manage our own fleets. We do, or I should say, Chief Parenti did a lot of our internal IT stuff. That's gonna be a big loss. And our interagency coordination. Response operations, obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's, our bread and butter that everybody sees, but, fires, but we also do hazardous materials, mass casualty. We do fire investigations, support operations, mutual aid with our partners, communications, we do a lot of aspects there. Emergency medical, obviously the response, but there's a lot of state laws, regulations that we have to abide by and manage, it's same with billing and Medicare, and you gotta be very careful of not making a mistake on that because they jump right on you. But also we do, a lot of, responses to different hospitals and such for specialty. We do QA/QI, so we do our own internal review of calls and make sure that, we're meeting the benchmarks, identifying where we need to improve. Community risk reduction, this is our big prevention stuff, so it's, it's inspections, going out and doing inspections to facilities, we go out to all the high hazard stuff. Quarterly, look to see if there's any regulations or violations, safety stuff that we can do. We do all the school stuff, public education, public outreach. We also do hazmat, and then public education, like I said, plan review, permits, everything. Trainings, pretty self-explanatory. Logistics, that's, maintaining our own facility and whatnot. Again, coordinating with our facilities director. And then the other thing we do is emergency management, which is kind of the side thing that falls under the fire service, but it's a state law, under the emergency management, the Sarah Title Act. And so under the charter, the fire chief is the emergency management director for the town. So during a disaster, the fire chief is really in charge of the whole town. Under the select board as administrative, but so it's a big responsibility on that because really anything happens, like all those major plans and everything, coordination, that all falls under our division. Some towns have their separate stuff, some have experts that are kind of working on it. So one of our newer hires has a degree in emergency management, so he may get tasked with that as we move forward. So those are a bunch of things that we do. So I'm not gonna go too much into it, but there's a ton of stuff in there, there's summaries and whatnot, and I can get. Some of our statistics for this year, so in 2025, we did 2,479 emergency funds. That is up from 2,365 in 2024. Responses, this is a big thing, so, and I haven't been able to drive down what the number is, but in 2023, this time in 2023, we had done 85 calls. In 24, we were done 89 calls. In 25, we've done 81 calls. In 26, we've done 366 calls. And it has been busy. So, I mean, I think that number is not too far off. But it's been a significantly busy time. I mean, it's just the ambulance transports have been pretty far up. Ambulance transports is for that's mutually turnout time inspections. We did, let's see, just about the same inspections, a little over 1,000 inspections. Violations issued, 113 in 25 and 102 in 24. And training hours, which this is our other big thing, because to be the best of the best, you gotta train. And we have a lot of required training we have to do, but also a lot of training that we want to keep in. In 24, we have done a little over 1,800 hours of training. In 25, we've done a little over 4,000 hours. That's been an impact of the Safer Grant because we have that staff that we can now allocate people to actually do training, or they're not exhausted doing training. And the other thing that's been really improved is our public relations, education, prevention stuff. So in 24, we did 47 events. In 25, we did 93 events. So big jump there. And then interactions with people that we track. The chief is a self-proclaimed data geek. I found the article when he was hired, and that's self-proclaimed data geek. So in 24, we interacted with 9,526 people. In 25, we interacted with 14,008, so just about 14,000 people. So big difference in getting out there and educating stuff to prevent stuff and basically put ourselves out of business. But that's our goal. So right now we have 28 line firefighters, split up with 7 per shift, which is 1 captain, 3 to 4 firefighter paramedics, and 2 to 3 firefighter EMTs. So we run a minimum of 3 paramedics on a shift. We try to have more because that's the higher level of service, but we do have EMTs that supplement. And then obviously we have the fire chief, the deputy chief, our executive assistant. We have a part-time individual that does that helps with ambulance billing and doing some grant stuff and whatnot. So, but that's only a part-time position. Any questions on that stuff? So, some of the big things, and I'll get to the budget in just a second, but some of the big highlights, 25, I think this is probably where, you know, everybody invests in town services to see a result, right? You know, what do I get out of my investment? So in 25, we hired 8 new firefighters to supplement our staffing. 8 firefighters under the safer grant that we received in late 25. We broke ground on the new fire station. We took delivery of a new engine and a new ambulance, which we call medic units. We also have another medic unit and a rescue on order. We did a whole new color scheme. You know, this year was all about reinventing and reinvigorating. You know, it was all about a new station coming, we had new people in, you know, how can we evolve from the past, which, you know, there's some good and some bad, how do we move forward? You know, so we completely changed the lettering scheme on the fire truck, so we finally went to red. So they went from lime green and white to white and red, so now we're red. So everybody's like, what is that? So, but we're all red and we went with a silver lettering rather than gold lettering to make it kind of different, but that was the decisions of all the guys, so. So that's a cool thing, and so, you know, kind of like in our 25 thing, the thing that we really kind of prided ourselves in, you know, I came on in 23. You know, we did a lot of planning. We did a lot of executing of our plans and did our due diligence, and we really placed the fire department in a good position for long-term success. Even to the point that basically, essentially, you know, with where things were going, we wouldn't really be much of a impact to the town for probably like 10 years. We'd just be self-go, new station, apparatus, people, you know, and that just gives the opportunity for the town to focus on some of the other departments or other initiatives that they have, you know, and the big thing to that was the safer grant. Some of the goals for 27, they're in the packet there, but I'll just hit on real quick. You know, our number one thing is to maintain the physical and mental health of the safety of all our members, not even on emergencies, but, you know, this is one of the, if not the most stressful job that you can have. And it takes a toll on you, and firefighters are very hard at letting things go when they go home. They're just very committed people. And they take things really hard. They're here for 24 hours. So it's almost like they're town residents when they're here for so much. So they really take, they really have emotions into that. So that's a really taxing area that's industry wide, unfortunately, and with police officers too. Consistently provide high quality and timely emergency services to the community. It's all about response and what we can provide to the community. Consistently provide expanded prevention services to enhance life safety and reduce damage and loss. So, you know, if there's a fire, and, you know, firefighters like to go to fires, you know, but that's not our goal. You know, if we can prevent it or get to it early, that's where we really want to be. And that's where our prevention is. You know, between education, that people know how to keep safe or how to put out a fire quickly or something, even, you know, trips and falls for, you know, senior population. So the younger kids that at the schools and they go home and tell mom and dad and whatnot. But also all the inspections that we do, that's all to identify issues prior. So that, you know, if we see areas that are cluttered or blocked, you know, we can clear those beforehand, before they become an issue. So, and that helps with, you know, loss prevention. And some of the initiatives that we have done also is we started doing a new door numbering system, which I'm not going to explain, but it's between fire, police, and the building department got together. Some of the buildings in town, we're starting to identify the doors. So when you show up, you pretty much know, okay, you know, door A1 is on the front of the building in the right corner. If it's D2, it's on the back of the building. And what that does is for emergency response, obviously that's great, because if somebody calls on the phone and says, you know, I'm trapped inside, okay, is there a number on that door? It says C5. Okay, we can go right to C5, open the door, you go. But from a prevention standpoint, we show up and someone says, hey, I broke a sprinkler head in my factory. And it's okay, where is it? Your factory's, 14,000 square feet. Well, it's right inside this door right here. Okay, well, rather than walking through that whole building, go right to that door and go up with the plug. So, and then the whole key of that is less downtime, less damage, they get back up to normal and they can get back to business. So there's benefits on that. Consistently provide and expand community outreach and public education, not just with students, but, our senior populations, those are the two that we really focus on, because there isn't this year yet, but there's usually, state funding to help with those. But just that in between group that gets missed all the time, probably the people that are more apt to have something, especially with lithium ion batteries and stuff, it's a bit dangerous on that. So, we try to get out into the public to do different interactions, even the end of school event, touch a truck and then just use the opportunity to talk to the parents and give a couple of flyers out. And then our last goal for the year is to continuously prepare the whole community for large scale and high impact events. And that's it takes a lot when you have a major event. Because everybody has to come up to the table. When you're in a smaller community, everybody has to step up and people have to, fill in positions that they're not used to. But that's where you maximize people's skill, and you gotta train that, you gotta have plans for that. And you gotta know that you're gonna fail at it, you're not gonna be perfect at it. But the goal with that is to get the community back to normalcy, as reasonably as possible. Because when we're down, that's money, it's tough. So those are some of the goals that we're on with that. So let's just talk into some money stuff. So financial savings and initiatives. So, obviously, we don't make widgets. We can't make more widgets to make more money and do the things we want to do, right? So we have to be creative in how we can supplement the tax dollar, right? How can we do it? Grant opportunities is a big thing that we're on. We go after whatever grants we can. Between 2024 and 2025, we applied for $228,845 worth of grants. We were successful in awarding $105,744. So, and that was some of the federal ones you put in for a lot, and then they take everybody and say, we're not going to give everybody the max, we'll break it down. So that's a pretty good success rate. And we've used that for things like buying structural firefighting gear or equipment, stuff that would either go into our operating budget, which is tax funded, or into the capital plan for the town. So in either way, it kind of takes the lesson off. And then obviously in 2024, we got the SAFER grant, which was over 3 years, we'll have a little over $2.8 million with that grant. And that grant there, 11% success rate nationally to get that grant. We were one of 5 in Massachusetts to get it. Very, very difficult grant to get it, and to get 8. And honestly, we put it over 10, but and probably would have got it, but well, 8 would get us to a much better place than we were. We were at 5 a shift doing north of 2,000 calls, and that's most transports. That's multiple calls back to back. So, and it was really wearing on. The other thing that we started doing was, it's notorious that trading in fire apparatus has been almost borderline criminal. We had for example, we had a fire truck that we were trading in to get our new fire trucks. $10,000 is what they were going to give us. So there's a new company out there called Garage that will do all the logistics for you and take on all the liability and whatnot to get rid of trucks in a different manner within 30B requirements. So that same engine that we're going to get 10 for, we get 80,000 for. And then so what that money do, the way it goes into the general fund. So I mean everybody gets the benefit from it. In any case, that's a $70,000 increase in order to act for the town. We've outsourced it to Foxborough Motor Squad to do a lot of our maintenance. They're a little bit cheaper, but the big thing for them is the fire department working on fire apparatus. So they know the logistics. So they won't say, yeah, bring the truck in, and 3 weeks later you call them, we haven't got to it yet. Well, we could have used it. He's like, hey, bring it tomorrow. I'm gonna get to it on Friday. Okay. And you know, there's some good honesty and trust in that too, calling back and forth on different things. And, the guy that runs it, really great guy, he even will come up and mentor our in-house mechanic and kind of guide him through. One of the things that we got on his recommendation is we bought, it was not cheap, you know, couple $1,000, was a code reader, so our mechanic has, you know, a computer system that they can plug into the apparatus and run all the codes, so they can diagnose what the problem is, and then that makes it a lot easier to send it out. Like, okay, it's gotta go here or go there, or call, it's this code, it's that code. Now, you know, we don't have to go through the diagnosis when we get to the vendor, because that's already been done, so that saves time and logistics. And sometimes you can just clear the code and be like, oh, it was nothing code clear.
Does the in-house mechanic do any of the maintenance, or is it?
So we have two that they're not fire apparatus certified, but they'll do regular maintenance, minor repairs, you know, light bulbs. They'll coordinate all the logistics that we need to get it to places. You know, and do other mechanic stuff, and then we have someone who works on small engine repairs, so chainsaws. We just posted a picture today. He was trying to rebuild the snow blower. You know, so, but I mean, they're great. They just step up and they like to do it, you know, and the nice thing is we have time now to do it, because, you know, we've been running the ambulance all day, but there's still people back to work on some of this stuff.
So these are firefighters that are also, that have these skills,
Yeah.
is that what this is? So, wow, okay.
Yeah, and that's, you know, it's we're losing that as we go, because a lot of times you had tradespeople that became firefighters, because you work your shift and then you go, you work your trade, right? So, you know, there was that era where a lot of people went into college, and we do have a lot of people coming to the fire service now that have college degrees and stuff. And they bring other skills, they bring their, you know, they bring technology skills and, you know, all that stuff that's big in the fire service now, you know, they're drone operators and things. But we also have these guys that come in and they're like, hey, I know how to do that. Oh, great. Can you fix that? And then you fix it. Well, guess what? Now you're in charge of fixing stuff, you know, so,
Yeah.
but they enjoy it. And, you know, they don't always get really anything extra for it. Other than, you know, kind of pride and being able to use it when they need it, but, you know, gives them ownership. They kind of like to be in it. And then we're always, you know, reevaluating our missions, you know, currently and in the future, how to evolve. What do we need? What we don't longer need? What makes sense? One of which is capital item that we did. I'll get into that right now. So capital items, just real quick, because I know we talked about it as financial planning, but apparatus, fire apparatus has been post-COVID, again, borderline criminal. The build times, yeah, the funds.
Not from, I have it on the CIP.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll just-
But if you just refer.
Yeah, I'll just kind of go through it, but, so, like the apparatus we bought, those was 3 years to build. We just, with the rescue that we spec'd out, they gave us 49 months to be built. Wow. We did not go with that company. We went with an internal company. There's monopoly investigations going into with Senate hearings on fire manufacturers and how they're now traded companies. And there's a lot of issues going on, so they're looking, so we've gone with a mom and pop shop, Suffin. Great company, so that same apparatus that we wanted was 26 months versus 49. Question. Oh, no, okay. So our two capital items for this year, luckily, is not fire apparatus. One is what we call a squad, it's a multi-purpose vehicle. It was the flavor of the day when it was bought before the chief and I came. It was supposed to be a brush truck and everything truck. It's one of those things that it can do everything, but it does nothing. We would use it to run with medicals and whatnot. So we had in a capital item $450,000 to replace that. But again, reevaluating and taking the firefighters that are on the street saying, hey, you know, do we need this? If not, what do we need? And they reimagine and redesign something that's similar and has similar capabilities. But we got the price down to $222,000 to get, you know, really what we needed. So another big savings for the town. And the other one is to replace car 2, which is the deputy's chief's car. It's 2 years past its normal replacement. A lot of body rot and rust that needs to be put out. And then I'll put this on the table, just as looking forward in fiscal 28. we do have, a ladder truck on, next year, a ladder truck's up after its normal replacement. Which will probably be around 2.5 million, so we have in capital. These things are just so expensive nowadays. We plan on that to go with a spec build, so nothing custom. It brings the price down, we can still customize some stuff, it really shortens delivery time. The ladder's usually 20+ years that we keep. The one that we have, the Ronto Skylift that you've seen, 114 feet, again, bought before the chief and I came. It is a very specialized crane that only has, it's from, the Netherlands or something, Finland. A lot of moving parts, articulating platform, looks really cool. There's only 2 people in the country that work on it. And the parts are crazy to get, and one sensor goes on, it's out of service right now, because there's a sensor where the bucket sits, that if it's tweaked a little bit, you can't start the truck. So it's really been a difficult vehicle, and it's complicated, it's not an easy, so we're gonna go with something straight, simple, but it's still $2.5 now.
What's the wait time on delivery on those now? I know-
So if we went with that Suffolk company and a spec build, they said probably 18 to 26 months.
Okay,
So that one, they're really reasonable.
Yeah.
And they've been great with us, like, to the point, like, we ordered this rescue through them. We went down, did the drawings and all with them. Came back and, they realized with the paint scheme that changed, the air conditioner on the top, so the air conditioner unit that sits on top, they didn't include that in the paint scheme, so that would have to be painted. They said, we'll leave that, that could have been on us. Whereas these, these corporate companies, they would give you a dime. So it's a great company to work with. They'll even, just another, kudos to them, is they have a program where their services in Connecticut. In Massachusetts, you can drive a fire truck without a CDL license. Connecticut, you can't. So, unless you have somebody with a CDL license, it's hard to get the truck to Connecticut. They will either meet you at the state line, or they'll come up here and get the truck for you, take it, so you don't have to deal with the CDL license. So, really great company, and they're solid trucks. Westboro just bought a couple of them. So that's our capital stuff.
I just mentioned, seems like yesterday, but they did their presentation to financial planning in detail, so if you wanted to look at the details of their capital plan, which includes pictures and presentations, it was October 28th,
Okay.
2025.
That
So if you look
packet.
at- if you were to look in that,
Yes,
front, you can see,
Oh.
yeah, believe it or not,
time flies.
seems like yesterday.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
that's fine. I just wanted to brush on that. One of the things that makes us so unique compared to the other departments is our ambulance revolving fund. So we're the only department that, can directly support our budget or supplement our budget through direct billing of services. We do an ambulance call, we bill insurance companies, we bill Medicare. We do it through a third party company that bills. We do have a bylaw in town that town residents can apply for a hardship if they can't, if they can't pay the supplemental bill, we'll write those off. But anybody outside of town, we collect. That's how we make things work. So, and we also, we also collect, we also collect fees for all our inspections and everything, just like building does, certainly not anywhere near what building does, but that helps as well. And the other big thing on medicals, and just go back to the state for a little bit, is we have a lot of simultaneous calls or overlapping calls. Where, the ambulance is, on a call, they're transporting, get another call. The fire truck somewhere, so, you get calls back to back to back. Where if, right now we've been very good at covering up to 3 calls at the same time. It's been a real big difference. Whereas before we'd have to, get our mutual aid partners to come in. And when you call a mutual aid ambulance, they get the revenue that they transport. The more ambulance calls we do, the more revenue we build. Collections, so in 2025, we collected just over $1 million in ambulance receipts. In 26 so far, we've almost 6,500. I mean, 650,000.
How much have you had to write off?
I don't have that on me.
Is it common? Is it?
It's not too common, but a lot of times you'll get people that if they have insurance, we send it back. But if somebody's, hardship like, fixed income, things along those lines, and it's a couple of $1,000s, we'll write it off. I mean, they pay the taxes, so it's kind of
Sure.
it's hard to really, and the company will go after collections agencies for people that don't pay. And our collection rate as it is probably about 91%, so very good.
Wow.
Very good collection rate.
That's without going to the collection agencies. That's just.
That's just our regular.
Wow.
And so, we do really well. And I mean, it goes with the demographics that we have, you go to, some other maybe inner cities where it's not as high, so. So it's pretty good. And, most people have insurance, good insurance too.
We use bill and service too as well.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
It's not something in the department making cold calls. I would say this too, but to answer your question, Joe, we do contractual adjustments for Mass Health and Medicare. So we bill the people's insurance for their claims, and those are the only two contractual adjustments we do. Whereas if we were like a medical facility, we probably have contracts with all the major insurers to write off a big balance. But what Neil was saying is that we balance bill for the difference between what insurance pays and what people's bill is. And if their Mass Health or Medicare that difference gets written off, but then there's this factors that you go through to collect the balance of it. So we don't have as high probably as a medical facility would have in terms of write-offs.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just talking about write-offs for people not paying their bill, that's one thing, but as you know, the medical business, there's a huge amount of write-offs.
Oh, sure,
between
of
what they
course,
bill
every day,
and
yeah.
what insurance
Routinely,
pays.
yeah.
So the ambulance service is a little unique in that it doesn't have contracts with major insurers, so we balance it for the difference between what they pay.
And I
of them-
imagine if people qualify for Mass Health or Medicaid, we probably cannot just pay a couple grand to the fire department. I mean,
Correct. They're the only ones that.
Right.
And they have to fill out, there's a form they fill out, they have to justify,
Sure.
what their,
Yeah.
hardship is, and all that's confidential and,
Of course,
obviously.
but I guess I was just making sure, like, but you still collect a fairly
we're
large
still-
amount for.
Yeah, it doesn't really negative impact us, and if you take
Yeah.
the balance between taxes and citizen versus, trying to catch every little penny. To us, that's the balance,
Yeah.
Allocation, so this is another important aspect of the annual proceeds, and this is really where it benefits the town. And I believe I got the numbers right off the mitigation budget. Off the top, of that, so $1 million, so, off the top, about 435,000 goes directly into the general fund.
You mentioned the last 2 years, 1 million collected, and then last year was 650.
So far this year, so since July, we're at,
Okay, so it's a partial year.
Yeah, partially,
Okay.
that's where our collections are.
I was just wondering if that.
Oh, no.
Those
That would be a
volume
big,
difference.
that would be like a,
Especially if your calls are going from 80 to 300 or something like
Yeah,
that. I mean-
Yeah, I was wondering how that.
and a lot of that is ambulance stuff. And, we're able to not only, rather than calling in mutual aid and losing revenue, we now are in the opportunity to go to other towns and take their revenue, right? So it kind of helps too. Through allocations, like I said, for about $435,000 goes into the general fund. So we collect this money, goes in, it helps everybody, helps
Yeah,
pay some balance.
it underwrites their departmental budget. There's a formula that we use to come up with the number, but it's based on lines in their budget, so their budget's in full in the general fund, and then this transfer in underwrites
Yeah.
your budget.
Yeah, and then there's 588,000.
That's projected,
Yeah.
Typically they'll collect $1 million in revenue that goes through the revolving fund for ambulance bill.
Mhm.
But then we pay out with that transfer, and then the balance usually gets paid out. All of the debt service or pay downs for ambulances. We buy a new ambulance every 3 years, so because they have 3 ambulances, we replace them every 9 years, and
Yeah, those are really.
so they obviously get rotated. Then there's the lead time as well, but all of the ambulances get the the funding for them is this ambulance revolving fund, so the debt service and pay downs and so
Yeah.
forth come from get budgeted from that $1 million that we collected.
Yeah, it definitely helps, because, you know, ambulance goes on capital, $500,000-$600,000 now. You know, that doesn't impact the taxpayer at all, it's 100% covered. We also have the opportunity to cover other things, but we use that money internally to help supplement our operational budget, with stuff that's EMS related. So maintenance on the ambulances, maintenance on the squad and the rescue, which are EMS. We can use that money towards that, things that we don't have to put into the operational budget for tax revenue. So our request budget is $2,743,784. But with our actual budget is, you know, just around $3,322,000. Right, so if we didn't collect any ambulance funds, we'd be another $1 million on the tax base. So we fund a third of our budget by ourselves. So when you look at our budget, you say 2 million, it's like, no, that's really 3 million. We're just, the more work we do, the more that comes down to. So I think that's something that gets lost sometimes with, especially explaining to the taxpayers of where that money goes and how it benefits the department and benefits the town. So you're getting a pretty good bang for your buck, because, yeah, you know, town residents insurance pay for it, but anybody that travels through town, do medicals, anybody that stores in towns, you know, they're getting billed under insurance, and we're collecting that, so it's a good benefit for them. Any questions from the ambulance fund? Jason, very good explaining it. You put that one on. No, he's good, he's good. Operational budget, so let's get into why we're really here. So, the increase between FY 26 and 27 is just around, just shy of $6,000, 5,960. That's a 2.11% increase, which is far below the 2.9 direction that we have. We met with Jason and stuff, had our discussions with that. As far as I know, I mean, there wasn't any issues. That was probably before October.
Yeah, so I will add that the fire union contract is open right now for 27, so there will be.
Yeah.
We'll have to provide something for the settlement of that contract, likely, we've assumed a 2% increase here, but any additional amount beyond that.
Yeah.
We'll have to carry centrally and transfer in.
I'm just maybe not remembering. I thought last year all of the collective bargaining agreements.
They were, and they had agreed to a 1-year contract just for 26.
Really?
So what I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So what the fire union wanted to do is, it's very difficult for a town logistically to do all, we have 5 unions.
Yeah.
All 5 unions on one rotation cycle. That's a heavy lift. So the fire is like, you know, all right, we'll take a 1-year deal, a bunch of things are changing, and kind of start taking people off that cycle. You know, so now they'll do a 3-year contract, they'll be 1 year off everybody else, and then.
Okay,
So down to about 4 and 3 years.
right,
Yeah.
instead of 5, so it was intentional in order to.
Yeah.
Not make it such a gargantuan task.
Yeah.
Okay, for the town,
Yeah,
okay.
and then we'll go into, so.
I'm glad I'm not going crazy, I stopped last year.
No, it did. Yeah, they did a 1-year term, so they're, and that's, you know, they, like, that one, the current one expires in July of 26. So they're in contract negotiations, yeah, they're gonna have one meeting, right? Ground rules meeting. So reductions that we made in the budget, call firefighter line, we went from 10,000 to 7,000, so that's a 30% discount. Cut. The reason for that is there's not many people out there anymore that want to be volunteering call firefighter. It's just not a thing. It's especially when you're getting to the more wealthier towns that, you know, it's professional, you know, they're not around here. There's a lot of families, they want to be home with their families, so it's not really dynamic. It's a lot of towns around us are not necessarily the same, so what we did, we have 1 active firefighter paramedic call member. So you know, we dropped that number down. We're always actively still looking, and we have 1 member that's interested in starting up an Explorer post again, which is, you know, young kids and just kind of get them exposed. And then outreaches to the high school and the trade school. We bring on an intern every summer sometimes we'll bring them on during the year, do ride-alongs, expose them to what the fire service is, what they need to get in. Hopefully, maybe some of them will kind of want to join on as call members. But, it's a difficult thing now. It's hard enough getting full-time fire nowadays, now my call members. We dropped the employee physical line from 14,000 to 9,000. That's a cut of 35. That line, I believe, was increased because we were hiring savers and we had to give them all physicals to pre-hire physicals. That and safer did cover some of that, but that 9,000 is still lower than before. The hope is that we can retain people and not have to hire people. The increases, so as Jason mentioned, the CBA, we had estimated 2%, see what the budget ends up, the contract ends up being. And then obviously any of the contractual stuff that's in the budget now, or in the CBA now that, the pay raises that are in there. The biggest one is longevity, went up by 14%, with 8,000 to 9,000. So, and then the other areas that went up were our contracted areas and things that are affected by inflation. Just like everybody else. So that's like custodial supplies, materials and supplies, and dues were like the biggest ones. Again, like the latter, future outlook. So just to start evaluating next year, hopefully this time next year, we'll be in the new fire station. What the utilities and the impacts will be for that, we just don't know yet. It is geothermal, so we save on fossil fuels, but there's electricity, there will be solar, but we don't know how much solar that'll balance off. So it's a bigger building, but it's got multiple zones, so it'll take time to tweak everything in the building to get it to work. So it's a bigger building, so more than likely it's gonna be more than the building we have now, but see how we can balance out. So any questions on that? And if you don't, I have one other item that I wanted to discuss.
Yeah, if we give a chance for committee members, any questions so far? No. And then Tim or Mona, any questions from the remote?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, none for me.
Just one question, and it's kind of in the general realm of staffing, and I think you had a paragraph in here talking about that we've lost some members looking for opportunities in other departments or other careers.
Yeah.
How are things at the moment in terms of openings or positions you're trying to fill?
So I have some info that I can give you, but so right now, all our positions are full. Since 2023, when I started to January, we've lost 9. And of those 9, I haven't hit something, but of those 9, there we go. Of those 9, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 were paramedic, firefighter paramedics, so experienced, trained. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them had between 6 and 9 years of service to Northborough. So the thing is, like any job, but especially it's so unique in what you see, you can't really plan for what you're doing. You go to a fire, it's not the same scenario. You go to a person that's, sick or ill, they don't react the same to medication. So it's a lot of field experience. So if they go to paramedic school, they graduate, they get out, they're really not, they're a paramedic on paper. They're really not paramedic yet. It takes time to get those skills. Same with the fire service. So, lose experienced people is pretty detrimental, because then to recruit people, which is so difficult nowadays, you have to bring in newer. So, for example, when we hired the SAFER, the union and the town made a side agreement outside the contract of being able to hire basic EMTs, because we had to hire so many that if you want to hire you know, a level of service, but you also want to hire the right people, right? And by adding, we could use EMTs to supplement the paramedics with the hope that they would go to paramedic school. And of the 8 that we hired, all 8 were basic EMTs. We didn't get any paramedics that we could hire. One of which is in paramedic school. We just had the two most recent openings we had. We had 3 openings because one of the safers decided career wasn't for her. So we hired 3. And that was to fill a basic position and 2 paramedic positions. We didn't get any paramedics. We hired an EMT and we hired 2 members that are in paramedic school. One is close to finishing and one just started. That's, you know, an 18 to 20 month program, plus learning to be a paramedic now. So that has a real impact on services to the town. It's just what it is, you know, and nowadays it's a buyer's market out there. It used to be that you stood in line for 3 days to get a fire job. And then when you were in, you're like, I'm in, I ain't never leaving. Now, you know, people will stay for 6 months, 6 years, they'll go over there for another $1. It's just the newer generation that kind of has that. Pension's not important to them. You know, that whole camaraderie, it's not there as much. You know, we had to expand our radius to hire from 25 to 40 just so we could attract more people to come. It benefits because they work 2 24-hour shifts. So, you know, it's not like they're commuting every day, so they'll come from a distance, but it's hard to recruit. So that's what that has, you know.
So when people leave, are they leaving for more money or are they, what's the
It's
impetus?
the various reasons. Some is family stuff, some, let's see, I can tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of the 9 left for other jobs. 2 left for another job that paid less. Because that's how bad the environment was when they were at 5. They were just so burnt out and physically and mentally they were done. And then 1 left, his wife got a good job, so, you know, husband said, all right, I guess we're moving. And he was a big loss. And then you know, the one that didn't work out, so. So there is, you know, probably more than should, and then, you know, with the safer starting, so. After we got the extra staffing. 2 left, no, 1 left to go to another job, which was a higher paying job. 1 left because of his wife's job and 1 left because she wasn't interested, so all those ones that left at 5, you know, everybody else has been staying. However, some of the dynamics that are going on in town, you know, we have 2 firefighters that have been honest with us, that they're actively looking to go there. One's a 6-year firefighter, paramedic, academy trained. The other, I think, has 4 years academy trained paramedic. And the thing nowadays is they'll take them this. I mean, you'd think you'd never hear it, but fire departments are giving $10,000 sign-on bonuses. If we send somebody to paramedic school, they have to sign an agreement that they have to pay back, you know, X amount on a tiered system. We pay 50%. You know, it's not a significant amount of money if they leave, but this fire departments are like, yeah, we'll cover that. You know, they just don't. We've had people, you know, actively poached from other fire departments. It's just a whole different world out there. So, and sadly, it has an impact. You know, and then, like I said, you know, some of the dynamics that are going on, which, I mean, everybody's aware of them. That impacts, you know, guys of uncertainty or whatnot. You know, if they have an opportunity to leave, you know, they may do it. Whether, you know, they may not want to go, but you know, they still go for their best interest. But some of the negative impacts with that also is, you know, should we, you know, lose staffing and whatnot? You know, we're not in a position to lose staff, and we're in a position to actually increase staffing, but you know, reasonably we can't. We've gone to 8, so that's where we did it on the federal dime for 3 years. But to you know, we really probably could reasonably be at 10 a shift. But the area that we're also lacking in is administration. The fire service is business, it's not just the guys on the going off trucks, Police has always been really great at having multiple people working day shifts to do all the stuff they do. Fire service has always been like, well, we'll kind of make it do with the people on the floor. But call volume so high that it's tough, so there's a lot of responsibility, so, I mean, we could probably use, we could justify 2 administrative captains to working days that would do fire prevention, and all those stuff. All the EMS can be a full-time job, managing that training, so there's those areas that we really could use, but I mean, obviously, financial climate is tough as it is. But, we tend not to meet national standards for response time, with, staffing changes, the loss of revenue, our retention and recruitment. And that's big because they're looking too, like, sometimes the highest paying job, which it's not, but sometimes the highest paying job sometimes isn't the best job, so you want to have both. That they want. Our customer service would be impacted, all the service inspections and stuff that we interact with people. It's like, well, we'll be there hopefully sometime today. Your plan review, well, we have 30 days and it's probably gonna take 30 days, so those impact. We probably have to eliminate public education and outreach, or drastically reduce it. We right now has the opportunity with 7, we can drop 1 member per shift. And not backfill it, so they go to training or things like that, it's not everything, but we can drop to 6. We don't like to, but it gives us an opportunity where, okay, if you're gonna go do this, we won't backfill, and that way it's not costing us any money. But we'll get the benefit if you're going to education or things like that. And obviously that would, we go back to poor morale and physical health. And then, emergency services, obviously, all those things, but, the years to develop, on that, there's a lot of impacts nowadays. It's much easier when, 1,000 people took the exam, you hired 5. And there's, I have information that I shared before, but one of the things just to kind of go over, so, because I'm trying to do some analytical data, so, our EMS, our mutual aid transport, so I talked about our mutual aid transport, and basically how many times we have to call mutual aid to come in, not just come in, but we track how many times they transport. We can't figure out how much money we're losing, but you can estimate how much a transport is. So in 24, we had 62 transports that we had to give away. This year in 25, we're down to 52, so save 10. That's doing multiple calls, and that's with, we had 2 ambulances out of service for quite a while. So, so that was, we're really good at catching up, and I gotta give props to all the staff, because I've seen other departments and stuff. They'll clear the hospital, be on the way back, hear a call, and they'll be like, yeah, we'll come get it. Where other ones are like, shh, don't tell them we cleared the hospital, which, so they'll jump right on it, so. Our inspections, stay about normal, violations, training hours, so I talked about that. Our turnout time, which is the speed we get out of the building. Went from, we increased, we reduced that by about 10 seconds, and 10 seconds was a big deal. Flash over, which is, fire, when a whole room just ignites and flames at the same time. With the stuff that's in houses nowadays, it used to be about 30 minutes to get to be a flash over. Now it's about 3 minutes, 20 seconds before it flashes over. Because everything in your house is frozen gasoline, it's plastic. And the house is so tight. The other thing that we get is fire, with that new stuff, fire doubles in size. So a fire starts this small, doubles in size every 30 to 60 seconds. So, getting there and getting into it is important, especially if we're trying to make a rescue or something. And then if you want to talk about medical stuff, like a cardiac arrest, nobody really has fires much anymore, right? There's not many anywhere, medicals are a big thing. So for cardiac events, I believe it's say 15% reduction in survivability every I don't want to give you the wrong information. Talk among yourselves.
But, Neil, is it accurate to say that it's really important for a community like Northborough to understand the value of having an advanced life support rated service?
Yeah,
Where some towns have basic life support.
Yeah.
But advanced life support means that your people can respond to the more complex calls, like cardiac calls.
yeah, so, yes, so you can look at paramedics nowadays is a mobile hospital, basically. Almost everything that an ER can do, the paramedics can do in the field. And that's why you'll see sometimes, it used to be, get in the ambulance and let's go quick. Now there's no speed because they can do all this intervention there, get them stabilized and then transport them. And there's some realistic stuff in the protocols where it's called, 20-minute CPR. If we have a cardiac arrest and there's no rhythm and there's no obvious signs of life, after 20 minutes, the protocol says we can call medical control and call the patient right there. And what they found is help the family, like they saw what everything got done. And then they passed away in their home. They can kind of grasp it more. Whereas the minute they go in the ambulance, go to the hospital, that's false sense that they're gonna be okay. And then if you've ever seen what they look like when they get in the hospital with everything's a mess and all that, that's the last image they see. So it's really had really good impacts. And it helps, the members too, because they get closure. They can kind of interact with the family. They become a patient now, so we can kind of help them. And then we coordinate with the police officers who are there to help them take on the next phases in it. But the survivability stuff, so for cardiac arrest, this survivability increases by 10% every minute without CPR, AED, or advanced life care support. And for strokes, which is most common now, recovery from neurological deficiencies decreases every 10% every 15 minutes without ALS intervention. So, again, to Jason's point, a summary for it, and mutual aid, you're looking at 8 to 15 minutes response time, and that's if they're available and the weather's good, they're not backed up with calls. So you can see like the direct impact that you. The other thing they're rolling out is they just updated the protocols that ambulances are allowed to call and carry whole blood now. Big thing, like we're so close to UMass, you think like, why would we give blood? You just, and the doctors are like, if you're 10 minutes from the hospital, you call and give blood. It's gonna be such a change to pre-hospital care of how much of a difference it makes. They did a bunch of studies in the state, the survivability rates are through the roof for anybody that's, hemorrhagic shock or major bleeding or anything. Big change. So we're getting there.
You're looking at kind of the measurements, just so I understand this. So you've got 46 seconds for 90% of the calls. Is the 46 seconds a benchmark or something? Or like I'm trying to figure out why you would have a measurement for 90%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the National Fire Protection Association, so NFPA, they set all the standards, right, safety standards. So that's where they get it a 90 percentile, which will never make 100%. So they gauge it off of 90%.
So what you do is you look at, you reporting, the 90% is fixed by what you report at.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was wondering which one was.
Yeah, they always, right, yeah, because I always, I'm like, why would we do 100%? But 90%, and maybe that's to make it more realistic, because really, if you did 100%, probably nothing.
And then the EMS response is the fixed numbers, the 95%.
Mhm.
Okay.
And just, when you understand some of the metrics that the standards are set by, NFPA doesn't, when they talk about fire responses and all that, they're only talking about fire responses.
Okay.
They don't take into account if you run an ambulance service and how staffing impacts, right? They're just talking fire trucks, like.
Yeah.
The other thing is NFPA, they want metrics is they have the first suppression apparatus at a residential house fire within 5 minutes. And then have 15 firefighters on scene within 8 minutes. So no small town really can do that on their own.
Yeah.
Not reasonably, so that's why we have our automatic gate and our mutual aid. But again, you gotta take into account, are they always gonna be available? The other thing that FPA does is they set, staffing per apparatus. So they say for a suppression apparatus should be 4, so recently. So if we were to meet NFPA standards on that, which, you always try to reach, but you gotta balance it. Would be 17 per shift just to staff the apparatus. That's not taking into account what an ambulance would impact. So, always strive to try to have that number that we can be as self-sufficient as possible. Like anybody, we have to balance it out.
Okay.
I guess one other financial thing to look at this is what the investment is that we put into hiring a firefighter and what we lose. So I talked about we lose the skills, we lose the paramedic, if we put them in paramedic school. Basically they come here, they go get the fire academy, go at the medic, now they're marketable, off they go, right? You don't want to be the farm team. You try not to be the farm team. But to onboard a firefighter EMT, within the first 3 years that they left, you lose between about $57,000 to $62,000. That's if they don't go to paramedic school. That's physicals, gearing up, training, everything that goes into it. That's front loaded in 3 years. These members leave in 4 or 5 years. You lost your investment. Now you got to hire another person. Now you got to pay that same money again. Some of it you can recruit, but a lot of it is in payroll and such. You can get some of the gear back. Not all the gear is supposed to be fitted now. You can't always reuse it, but we try. If it's a firefighter paramedic and we send them to paramedic school and we pay the 50%, our investment loss would be between a little over 79,000 to just shy of $86,000. So we put a lot of money, effort, and training into people. We don't want to benefit another community where they say, hey, we've been lucky to get one guy. Unfortunately, he left, but it was a firefighter paramedic experience. He grew up in town, so he wanted to come back. That was like a home run because it's plug and play. Great.
Yeah.
But we want to be the ones to get that. We don't want to, and then you take the other things. The longer they're here, the more they understand the community, they understand the geography, the streets and all that stuff kind of plays a little bit, they know the common houses, they know the people know them, the, quote unquote frequent flyers that we go to a lot, because they need to be lifted up or something, they're like, oh, they're not like, who are you? They're like, oh, hey, Joe, oh, Mary, you fell again, yeah, I told you, you really gotta move that rug, so those are the intangibles that you really can't get by just always having a revolving door.
Well, I imagine the issues you're talking about, they affect all the fire departments in all the towns, right?
Yes, to a degree, there's obviously some that are more attractive than others, whether it be pay or how advanced they are.
Advanced.
Progressive. How their budgets are and the different things that they can do, do they run a specialized, rescue truck or something? Do they have,
All right.
do they support being on regional technical teams? Do they support education? All these, these other intangibles. You can't control call volume because that's just what it is. And honestly, everybody's like, I want to go to more fires. And it's like, okay, well, you want to go to more fires, you're going to have to go to more fake alarms because they just go together. Like, you're not just going to get all of them.
Right.
Right. If you want more car accidents, you're probably going to get more just simples. Right. So, careful what you wish for, but some people will go to that, but to lose 9 is pretty significant. Again, 5, I could see the wear on the guys when you came in because, the ambulance would never, they'd get a call in the morning, they never be back. And they still have to do reports and all that, so, and then, sleep deprivation, all that. So, which is, why we were so successful on getting safer, because those are the things they look at, not only the call volume metrics, but what are the impacts and what are your goals to get and stuff. So, so it was really great. Again, I wish they would just fund it indefinitely. But I guess we're lucky to get it now. I don't know how much federal funding is really going to be as things get less and less as we go. But, anything else? Jason said the numbers. Yeah.
I don't have anything to say, but happy to.
I mean, I guess I'm,
Answer any questions.
as far as morale goes, I mean, because now you are fully staffed and you're building a new house. And you have shiny new red trucks with silver letters. How much does all this play in to retention and with employee satisfaction and with morale?
Yeah.
So. We were going really good. I guess I probably wouldn't have to worry about us for 10 years. But, you know, to be transparent and honest, if you look what's going on. It's not a good place right now.
So,
I actually don't.
so just to fill in, Jeff, so a complaint was filed by a member of the select board about the fire station building project. And the way that was submitted, discussed, and is yet to be resolved is causing deep morale issues.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, it's,
Did I- Fair enough, the way I said that.
yeah, you skirted right around it. Good job. You know, there's other minor things behind, you know, stuff, so, you know, and again, firefighters, you know, love them, but you know, they're emotional people. They're type A emotional and they're doers and, you know, about objectives and meeting objectives. They see a problem, their mindset is to fix it. When they see problems that they can't address or problems, they're just like, I don't understand why that's the problem. You know, it impacts them. But that's what makes them great, you know, servants, because that's what you want come to your house. But it can really impact them. You know, again, like I said, they're there for 24 hours. They feel like they're part of the community. It's not like 5 o'clock, I'm out. And they work overtime.
So something. A statement against one of them becomes a statement against all of them, of course, right? I mean, you understand in your career.
I've been a police officer before, I know, yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, they're the same. They're out, I mean, most police officers are out in the community all the time. It's right. So, and feel like you're part of the community.
I get it. I just wasn't aware. I've been outside in politics for a while. Well, hopefully that's resolved soon, and hopefully we can
I can't say anything.
retain people,
I-
and, you know, and I just, you know, because morale's important,
That's the thing to say.
It's the number one.
you know, and you. Yeah, people will leave for less money if they're miserable.
So, you know, Chief and I, you know, and the officers, you know, we do what we can, you know, there's always, you know, I mean, as bad as it is, there's certainly worse places, right? You know, the grass isn't always greener and you do those things, you know, you try, but you know, you keep it up and you gotta be honest. You can't just be like, oh, no, everything's great. Like, have you looked around? Like the whole world's on fire. Fine, nothing's going on here. You know, you gotta be somewhat honest that, yeah, some things are unfortunate, but what can we really control?
You can control what you can control, and that's it.
Control, so we just keep moving, we keep doing the public always loves the fire service. You know, so we know we got, you know, the public behind our backs, you know, 100% to like them, and so, and you just kind of keep doing your thing, and, you know, just, it was great, because just, actually it was today, you know, they were, oh, no, it was yesterday, because we had extra people on because of the storm and stuff, you know, and, you know, I could hear them down there laughing. And I was like, that's what you want, you know?
That's what you want to hear now.
You know, that was cool, so hopefully this will.
Yeah.
No other questions here in the room?
No.
One more round through Tim and Mona. Anything else for the deputy?
No.
No, I'm good. I just want to say I'm disappointed to hear that morale has taken such an unnecessary hit.
Here.
Stuff. Well, Deputy Stussy, thank you so much for a very clear and important presentation about the services provided, but nice clean budget, easy to review.
Yeah.
Straightforward. The fire department's doing a great job.
So, I made a couple of copies of that thing with QR code. so-
Yeah.
Actually. The other thing that I brought is, if you're interested. Yeah. Copy that to you.
How long has it been since like that was put up in the town? This type.
So we rolled out a couple of different things.
Yeah.
That was a while back, but we've been trying to figure out how to roll this out because. So in order to put, you can't put like an image of a QR code on like Facebook because it doesn't work. And then, so we have one that has links, but you can't put a PDF on social media because. So you put a picture, you can't put the link. So we're trying to figure out like, how do we distribute it?
Get it to the best.
Other than old school posting, but
That's good.
so this is some of the others. This was just a fun little pretty old deal, but it's good to look into it.
Emphasizing that. Oh, and yeah, their previous. Thank you so much. Very good to have that.
So always open, and if that's the same Jason, which I think it is, I will I'm working on your stuff, but I have to get this. We're one citizen, very engaged, great questions, Working on some answers, yeah. That's probably awesome. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. If you get me on, we go. I'm sure it's gonna happen.
Okay. You got me extension. All right, I'm gonna go upstairs and listen to chicken. I thought everybody did it just for us.
I know, the other party is.
I was like, geez, what's going on? No, this is for the chicken.
All right, thank you much. So next on the agenda was talking a little more detail on finance department and undistributed expenses and debt and whatnot, but Jason, you want to pass over?
Yeah, so
that
I,
to the next.
the intent was to have that written up in the clear, easy to read format, like we have done with those sections, I didn't get to it. But I assume people don't have 2 hours tonight to go through this presentation that I made last night to the select board, but that's included in here. And Scott, maybe you can help me hit the high points here.
Yeah, so we've got a copy of the presentation that was talked about, discussed with select board last night. So it's not important that we get the same information, right? And stay away, especially if anybody that wasn't able to attend. So in this presentation.
Maybe I could just start out by explaining that a key takeaway, we kind of navigated through this presentation, how we've moved through the budget so far this year, starting from the summit to setting the tax rate for the current year, plus knowing our free cash, setting a free cash plan to have a policy for the budget, send out budget instructions in December to departments. And then we moved through the budget process, working with the schools to update our numbers as they typically start with a high number and then edit it downward as they go through their process. In February, I think we were at a $1.44 million budget imbalance or needing an override based on the projections that were made back in November for our budget policy. Moving forward to yesterday, we were at $1.33 million of a budget imbalance or needing an override of that amount. And the kind of the important takeaway from the meeting last night was the select board voted to as budget policy allocate the remaining free cash plan for the operating budget to get through balancing the budget for 27, so that no override. We're going to avoid it. Everything we can do to avoid an override for 27. Did that?
Yeah,
that kind of encapsulates.
So the first 30 pages or
Yeah,
so
so
is that history going back to the summer. So this is actually a good path because it kind of reminds us where we were at now to step through. And I think, Jason, if you take us maybe to the spot where you lay out
Yeah, so-
the model, maybe you
Page, there was just a page numbers. My fault for that.
oh no, they're there. I think it's
If we get to the part that talks about what the options would be, the page looks like this. So basically, these are the options that we talked about. These were the,
yeah, that's like 33.
yeah, and it's, yeah, it's, well, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Page 18.
Oh, they're back to me.
Yeah, okay, well, maybe I think some of these points are repeated on the images, but.
Yeah.
These were the options that we talked about of ways that have been coming up to these committees and so forth, the trash subsidy.
Let's go 18.
Okay. Yeah, you can, sorry. They're starting.
They're not numbered.
They're
Upper, yeah, 14.
I guess even 19 is the version with the number.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe just talk to
I
that.
don't want to give up my suspense.
That's right, that's right.
Build suspense here. So if we start at 18, these are the options we talked about, the pay as you throw subsidy, so increasing trash bag fees in order to reduce the subsidy from the general fund. The overall subsidy is about $700,000. OPEB, obviously it's it's not an ideal solution, but it's a number we're not legally required to fund OPEB contributions to the OPEB trust. Obviously, that's
Kicking the can down.
kicking the can, yeah. We've kicked the can from before the OPEB was even recognized, the can's been kicked.
Yeah.
So we've made great strides by building a balance in the trust fund.
Yeah.
Do we need to contribute $600,000? I mean, that we early on decided to limit that from 600 down to 300. So the 300 is what we could potentially the limit to what we could apply to the balance by not moving that for the year. The downside to that is that it's obviously hard to bring back in future budget years. So once that capacity is used for something else, I don't know. I don't know if people remember this, but going back, I think it was 2014, 2015, somewhere around that timeline, the town adopted some local options for additional revenue. That was the local meals tax, excise tax, and the rooms to excise tax increased. There's an excise tax for rooms, but this increased it up to 6% now. So the town viewed those additional revenue streams as being a way to start funding OPEB, and that's what gave us the capacity to start funding the contributions to the OPEB trust. So those are at a point where they're almost the same amount as what our contribution to OPEB was. So basically, if we redirect those revenues toward general fund expenses, it's hard to then carve out different revenues to make up the difference. So that's the challenge of if we continue touching OPEB to bring back. Obviously, that's just the trust fund contribution. Within our general fund budget, we fund our retiree health insurance. The current OPEB, this is future OPEB that we're funding in the trust fund. So we do fund OPEB on a day-to-day basis, and that's one of our budget challenges as annually is health insurance in general, but included in health insurance is retiree health insurance as well. So one of the other ideas that we heard from one of the members of this committee too, that was talking about increasing our local receipt budget, because basically I explained this last night, but I think we all know, and I assume everybody knows this, but I'll just explain it again. The way that the tax rate is calculated is we decide what we're going to spend for money. We make predictions for how that is going to be covered from revenue. And then when we set the tax rate in the fall, we know what our actual values are. They're certified by the state, so those numbers can change slightly. All of the other revenue sources that we have get applied, and then the balance is taxes. So if we get more state aid than we've predicted or think that we or know about at town meeting, if we have some new fee that we start charging, we can increase our local receipts, and that depresses taxes. When other revenues come in, those lower the tax rate. So typically local receipts is the only thing within our revenue budget that we have some discretion over. So it's also kind of our pressure relief valve. So the risk of going up too high on local receipts is that we're making a prediction now for what's going to happen 18 months from now with collections. So if one of those, if we're aggressive and say max out what we think we're going to collect, we could get to a point where we would either have a revenue deficit and have to fund that the next year within the general fund, because you have to raise in taxes what your revenue deficit was for local receipts. That's why you're kind of forced into a position where you're being conservative with your local receipt numbers. So we've done that in the past. We've shown them growing slowly, but there's been calls to increase them more. So there is room to increase them somewhat. Another good example is that we've had interest rates are high for bank account interest. We've generated a lot of money up beyond the budget for investment income, but that's not something that would be recurring on an annual basis. So we need to be careful about not saying, oh, last year we collected $6.9 million in local receipts, so we'll go to 6.9 million next year. So it doesn't necessarily work like that. It can be cyclical. The other thing is that we always count on underwriting the budget with free cash, and the generator of free cash is both unspent appropriations, so budgets that our department has an appropriation to spend. They're not allowed to go over that. So if they don't spend all of it, that returns and that becomes part of free cash. And then the other balance is surplus revenue that comes in above the budget. So typically those are the two drivers of free cash. So these are the amounts that we talked about on page 19. It's just the same things with some amounts next to it that shows where 1.33 million could come from. We were suggesting that doubling the trash bag fees could potentially raise $400,000 to reduce the subsidy, so that people were uncomfortable with doubling the bag fees. So thought maybe 75%. $300,000 instead of $400,000 and 100%. But that was kind of just to develop that isn't set in stone. We're going to come forward to the select board again in the future to present that to get the select board to make a decision on what the bag fee should be. So it could be a number less than that. So again, it was just to throw some numbers on a paper and a suggested route to how we can get to 1.3.
That's a cool question. One of the things we talked about last year with when the dog park was not yet open but built was we talked about the annual licenses increasing the price to help offset the town's operating budget line item that has to go to support that with UW. Has that happened? Or I know this year was the same, but I mean for next December.
I figured that question was gonna come up, but I didn't get a chance to look at that up, but
Okay.
I know we discussed it, and I think it did go on the agenda, and that was September, that would have been in the fall.
For specifically the dog park.
For dog licensing to increase the price of the annual license, 'cause it's really cheap.
Yeah, like, she did, Damien
They did, yeah,
I
but
think she did.
I'm just curious, because it's just like kind of like the idea of having like a mobile key card for the for the dump, for the, for your brush.
Yeah.
It's like, these are really kind of premium services that are only used by some people. And so instead of having tax revenue pay for that, all of it anyway, it makes some sense to have like that end user, pay a nominal fee for it.
we were trying to raise the dog fee in general, as the dog license fee in general as well, to pay for the animal control officer that is typically that should be targeted to fund that service at least. So there's a small gap between what we could transfer and it's a similar thing. We have a revolving fund for dog licenses. So we appropriate from that fund to underwrite the budget for animal control, and we typically transfer the entire amount that we've collected from the licenses to underwrite that service, and then there was a gap of $8,000 to $10,000 in that neighborhood. So increasing the licenses to, I don't think they got increased enough to potentially pay for what was estimated at DPW services. So
It was like 50 grand, I think.
yeah, it was in that neighborhood. So
Yeah.
we would have had gone up way beyond, and I don't think there's comfort level of raising the dog licenses to that level to kind of collect that amount of revenue. But there is a consciousness of paying for these services. That's why we're going to be coming forward with trying to raise some fees whenever it's appropriate. And one of the more recent, and again, I don't want to go on a tangent over $20,000 of revenue, but we have a license with the state, or we have a contract with the state to do our sealers of weights and measures, which is like. If you look at a gas pump at a gas station, there's a sticker on it that says it's been sealed, so. It's part of the public safety budget that somebody goes out and measures anything that is metered, so what consumers pay. It's a consumer protection, it protects the business for having, not giving away stuff. But it's also protects the consumer that they know if they're paying something that it's been inspected by somebody, a third party. So we have a contract with the state that's increased based on the number of establishments in town. They do an estimate based on the time that they spend. So our contract has been going up. So our fees, we're responsible for billing the establishments after the state, they give us a report of where they've inspected. They don't tell us in advance when they're inspecting, because an element of it is that there's gotta be a degree of independence, and it's kind of like an audit, but yeah, it's not necessarily an audit, but. So anyway, we are responsible for billing, and we want to make sure the fees that we charge align with what the state charges us in our contract, so that just got increased at one of the recent select board meetings.
And the building fees were increased.
The building fees were increased as
Yeah.
well. So building permits, we'll see how much more that generates in terms of revenue. I think the inspector or building commissioner estimated somewhere between $150,000 is what I think he estimated we would generate from that source. So what his increase did was, in effect, set the low value permits higher. So we have a volume of low minimum charge basically for the permits, but larger building permits will be the same kind of, because they're based on the value of the work. So as the value of work increases over time, that kind of takes care of itself. $10 per 1,000, I think is the rate that's charged for that. But we'll see through the end of the year, we'll see kind of the effect of the minimum fees being increased in that category. So along those lines, the pay as you throw, the enterprise fund for the trash, we're talking about increasing the bag fees so that we can recover some of that cost. But when you look around at surrounding communities that have pay as you throw programs, they're typically subsidized from the general fund, whether it's in the general fund, they don't collect the full amount of what it costs to run the service. Or if they have an enterprise fund, there's a subsidy. That's an element of something being an enterprise fund under that legislation, that enable legislation to pull it out of the general fund. That if it's being subsidized, it has to be subsidized explicitly. You have to vote the subsidy. So that's right on the front page of our budget model, like how much that subsidy is. All right, so we did use additional reserves.
I guess I still have to talk about this.
$700,000. That's what was left at the end of from free cash. We still have our stabilization fund, so our reserves would still be within a healthy limit, even though it's typically at the end of a fiscal year, we typically have more than what our financial policy calls for maintaining reserves. So we develop a free cash plan. It brings the fund balance down in relation to our budget. So once the returns are known and free cash is certified, that's when the plan gets developed for the next year. And then we take that plan forward to town meeting, and it draws down that amount down back into our policy.
But now was the decision then last night
That was the decision that
was to allocate that $700,000. To draw that down, so, and it's not taken out of reserves, it's more of, how in that free cash plan, we say, contribute to the operational budget, contribute to stabilization. It's more of, no, don't contribute to stabilization, use it in this year's operational. All right.
Okay.
Yes, and we're still within our financial policies guidelines for that will maintain 5 to 10% of in reserves. So stabilization alone is about 7%. So we're still within our policy. It's just using it in the operating budget. That's that's the quote override that we've done this year is by overriding our policy.
And our reserves will then be 5%.
They'll be more than 5%, they'll be 7%.
Oh, okay, good. So it's only a 1%. Okay, I got it.
I think, Jason, maybe then skip to.
I know I handed out, one of the last appropriations meetings, I handed out our historic local receipts, so. That was just the same numbers that I presented last time, but these are more summarized in this presentation than what was handed out.
Yeah, and as Jason mentioned, there was some talk last night about, really increasing, an estimate of what we get from local receipts and make that the budget. And I think you heard Jason right now be
The cautionary tale.
caution about
Yeah.
that.
So the risk would be, we're gonna be at our limit for Proposition 2.5, this budget. Because avoiding an override means that we're drawing down all of the excess levy capacity that we have. So basically, for us to spend more money or to, if we had a shortfall somewhere, we would have to go back and cut budgets to the legislative body. And we'd have very limited options at that point. It's much more, we have to be much more precise about our predictions and accurate with them. So that's the bit of thing that I'm doing with some of these numbers. It would be watching these numbers through the end of the year because we're making predictions on local receipts based on FY25's receipts being healthy. Looking at them through 6 months of FY26 doesn't really tell us a lot because a lot of them are kind of seasonally adjusted. Motor vehicle, that's the biggest component of it, and we won't know if we hit the number until February. It's likely we will this year based on the bills that went out in February, this current month. So good news, we're in good shape. We have to collect that money. So, we're not taking unnecessary risks, but again, it's something to be careful about because we have to be much more precise given that we have no levy capacity. So in another year, if we had a lot of excess levy capacity, if something came in a little bit higher, it would just like that, the tax levy would just go up that much more. And it wouldn't be, it would just be something that happens through the tax rate setting process. It would be, something that would require calling a town meeting.
I think, Jason, it might make sense to look at page 28, where you show then the 5-year projection. And on that page, it's if we still have a 1.3 billion dollar.
That's the current model with all of the same assumptions that we made at the summit. So basically, it's just showing where we are with the trajectory set from FY27 where we are now. From what was assumed, given very modest operating budget increases, 3%.
So that's how the model projects out. If you continue, say, 3%, directives to the departments for budgets, and then assumptions around new growth there, all the other things, and you see that, we have a horizon of continued gaps, right? Deficits there that implies overrides throughout those subsequent years as well.
I think it's really gonna bite us at town meeting didn't approve the stabilization for the safer grant. I think that was really unfortunate. Like so that's gonna be 2029.
28 is
28.
where we'll have 3 months that would need to be provided for. So if you flip to page 29, that we're including those numbers in our expense.
Yeah, so 29 is the first full year where we're on the hook for all
for eight, yeah.
Right.
So then I think if you keep a thumb on 28 and then flip to 30, it'll allow you to compare the difference that if you then.
Yeah, if you employ those ideas
34
on that page, that's this is the model being adjusted for those factors that were on the.
So that clears the need for an override in 27, but then you see that not building up that levy capacity through the 2027 override kind of kicks that down forward then into 28. And so what was 1.7 nearly in 28 becomes 2.7.
Right. Wow.
So I think that the main point is, right, is we can get some relief. We're on track to avoid an override this year. But I think it was even Terry that brought it up, right? We really need to look at the subsequent years. And we see that we still have this gap in that shortfall.
Making very modest expense projections, it's showing that the receipts aren't there to support that, so they, a lot of decisions will have to be made as we go forward into the next year. I mean, it seems like it's given us some runway to get through this year's budget without needing to have an override for 27, but again,
So,
going to continue to be a challenge.
Steve, I've got this straight, because you've got on page 28. Are you saying that basically, if we don't never get the options we just talked about, we just go forward, we're looking at doing an override every year?
There would be a budget gap. Yeah, there would be a budget gap.
Right, so there's no way we're getting ahead of this.
Unless there's an alternative revenue that comes in of that magnitude, or some kind of
Or
budget
a
cut.
decrease of expenses.
Correct.
Okay, so basically what we're telling the town here, if you went and you said to, the town, what we're looking at is we want to spend more money than we're bringing in, and we're going to be looking at an override every year for the next 5 years.
That's what this was on.
And that was for a level service budget.
Good, correct.
Right.
Or
The whole
or
problem is the whole problem is the 2.5%.
Yeah.
It's never been modernized to today's economy and in the past that we've had. Everything escalated from all of our material costs to the fleet to this and that, and never mind just inflation in general. So we have been able to cover it in our acts now.
yes. So we've had the benefit of having excess levy capacity for a given amount of time. If somebody came in and said, you have $10 million more of excess levy capacity, the numbers would still be the same and the tax impact would be the same. People would have to be willing to pay the bill. So it's just one less burden to ask people for an election to fund an override, plus 2.5 override. So some of that, to the point of Proposition 2.5, is some of that is somewhat arbitrary. It's based on where values were set back when Proposition 2.5 was passed
KBs.
in the 80s. So it's grown differently in every community. Again, it's gonna be a lot of policy decisions going forward as we move into next year. But the key point of last night was that we think we're gonna get through 27 without an override.
And still have strong reserves, which.
Strong reserves, yes. So one of the key points is that I don't want to dance around the topic, but we have some very big capital projects in the capital plan coming forward.
Yeah.
And
They're right here.
so there's, and the fire truck for $2.5 million is relatively small in comparison to some of the other building projects going forward. And so that's the issue, is that we want to maintain our bond rating and be responsible with our level of reserves. Making sure we're addressing our long-term liabilities. So those are basically when the rating agency looks at us. We're AA1, and the things that were rated not AAA are our level of reserves. We have to hold a lot more money than just like the 5 to 10%, we have to have more, which a lot of people would not look favorably on as well, us sitting on, reserves at that level. But the other thing is long-term liabilities, which is pension and OPEB, so those are looked at by the ratings, these were a AA in those categories when they rank us. Again, we want to maintain our bond rating so that we can consider these large projects.
I think that was what was good overall, right? There's a framework that gets us through 27 without an override. You've got consensus between financial committees and boards, select board, with the $700,000 last night. In agreement with, these options, not talking exact amounts, but to use these type of these categories, to bring it level. So I think we're in a good position that way, and then we've got some consensus in that.
Where do we stand? Where does Northborough stand in relation to the other communities in Massachusetts? Is every community reaching the point now where they're gonna be looking at doing an override every year?
It's likely.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know what the statistics are, but there's, a number of them in our neighborhoods are
Yeah.
looking at overrides.
Is there any kind of push for a legislative fix?
Oh, yes, there's been a push to change Prop 2 to something higher. Something more tangible that we can work with. And
So maybe it's been indexed to inflation.
yeah, right?
Okay. One thing I think I will say though is that consistently this year, we're seeing departments coming in under their directive.
Mhm.
Except schools.
Yeah, so I think, that everybody heard the same message when we went through the summit, was that, it's that adding personnel changes the trajectory, so when you reset this model with, instead of having had a 3% increase, 4 or 5, or, in that neighborhood, the next year, that's where you're starting from, and you're that much, I don't want to say further behind, but you have to make that much more ground with a fixed amount of capacity. So that's been the challenge, but I think what's important to point out is that no new staff has been added to the budget, and there's some calculated amounts or calculated needs that were made in 25. But on the town side, it's rare that we're adding staff on the town side, so 26, 27, there's no new staff that's proposed, so that's kind of one of the leveling effects. I think a secondary thing that has happened when we've reviewed these budgets with departments is that they're building them to come in within these constraints. They're providing for the staff that they have. But I think some of the expense lines with the budgets are what's being constrained to make that happen, to make the budgets done. So things like training or supplies and things like that are probably being cut.
Well, yeah, some departments, that's all they can cut.
Well, yeah, we saw that.
Right,
Sorry,
yeah.
we saw training and expenses and we talked to, so I have to imagine there's not much more to squeeze from that stone, right? So,
Right.
So as mentioned, our biggest budget area in terms of on the order of 3/4 of the budget is a group that is not able to keep their expenses within that 3% or 2.9% goal. And it's also things that they can't control either, right, in terms of
Special ed.
inflationary debt, so between, that's why health insurance is a separate item, right? If it hits across both the school departments, both regional and vocational and Norfolk Ag, I gotta imagine.
Right.
But then the special education and the associated transportation.
Right, oh yeah, that's.
And that's gonna be another area that ultimately legislatively at the state level, something to be done. Because it's services that must be provided, but they're not fully funded. From the state. So it's going to, I forecast, that, you know. Next, or what might be, I don't know if it's helpful. But perhaps next year's some more conversations with the school committees and just not the superintendent. Might be helpful, and, you know, I think they're, you know, they're on the same page, they wanna keep services, they don't wanna increase. Staff, they're cutting staff, right, or the implied increases they have implies a reduction in full-time positions. But I think there's a need for more direct conversations, more direct collaboration, because right now, I feel that it's a process that's outside of our sight and influence, not that we should have influence, but we don't intersect
Well,
until the very end.
in
I guess
their,
that's what it's-
in their presentation, when they laid out their goals were about doing great things for the students and everything else. There was no goal of saying, trying to be fiscally responsible or trying to, you know, maximize, you know, the effect it has on the people that are paying the bills. There was nothing in there about that at all. And everyone else, when they've come to the, I mean, you know, the police came in and they said, yes, I need this, but I'm not doing it because I want to stay under the amount. And, you know, so other people are saying, hey, trying to stay in this range is important. And the schools, it didn't even acknowledge that was there. And somehow that was disappointing that they didn't say, hey, we have some responsibility to the taxpayers in the town and we need to, you know, are we managing this as best we can? So again, I was disappointed in that.
Yeah, when we meet with the superintendent, he definitely understands what we're up against. But then it's, yeah, of course, he has to go before the school committee, so
Yeah,
we're kind of in limbo for a while
Right.
until they agree to a certain number, and then there has been several
Yeah.
reductions, but
So that's why I think the opportunity is right now, there's not a conversation of the residents that form an appropriations committee and the residents that form the school committee.
mhm,
Right now, those are conversations that don't happen.
right,
At those committee levels, and so you've got town staff, department heads, superintendent, finance directors doing their best. But we're just not having a conversations, and there might not be different outcomes.
and
I think
last
it's an
year
opportunity.
at town meeting, you know, it was tough and, you know, people were really aggressive and a lot of it was at the town departments. And I mean, I thought the town departments did their best last year and are really doing their best this year. And where we're getting hit is something that, you know, I didn't feel anyone was really questioning the school budgets at all last year, for example. And
that's typical.
it's typical,
In every
yes,
town,
exactly,
yeah.
but, you know, I think we gotta get across that's 2/3 of our annual budget. And we just sort of are trying to squeeze things out of the other third. And, you know, I'm concerned about that.
So again, the challenge for us would be if somebody said, cut $1.5 million out of the town budget, the town departments account for about 16 million of the 90 million that's the
Yeah.
budget is. So that would be, you know, that would be the almost impossible. I mean,
Right.
fire was one of the bigger departments, it's $2.7 million total, so.
Yeah.
If $1.5 million can't come out of their budget
Yeah,
without, you
right.
know, laying off half the people in that department. You know, it's just, we tried to focus this attention of this challenge of finding the 1.3 million by focusing on the big items like health insurance for one.
Right.
Last year, and again, I said it earlier today, and I'm boring myself because I keep repeating myself.
But that is a main factor.
Had we known last year, we would have been talking to the employee groups, and we've had a long history of having good renewals. And that's a factor of working with the employee groups to come up with mutually beneficial plan design changes and provisions that can bring us in within a reasonable amount. And again, the world's changed, that nobody knew that GLP-1s were gonna come out and they were gonna rate, we didn't know that, and then last year, we were getting notice that the rates were gonna go up 10 to 12% in January. And we figured, all right, well, we'll weather the storm 1 year with that, and then we can address that the next year. And then we heard at the end of February that it was gonna be 25%, and then we're lucky that it got back down to 17.99. But we would have been working with employee groups sooner, and we're seeing that the runway we have, that's extremely heavy lifting to make changes there.
Right.
But something like health insurance, I mean, we have to provide it, everybody needs it, and it's.
And the thing is that holds for everybody. It's not just the town and the school. It's like every single one of us here is dealing with that with
Right.
health insurance.
Yes.
The companies we work for, we're all affected by this and we're all feeling that pinch. So, it is something, it's a shared thing. It's
Right.
not, we're not asking something of, the town, we're facing the same thing with the town employees and the school employees that every single one of us is facing. Anyway, because we're all affected by this.
Let me make sure, Tim, let me give you a chance. Sorry, I didn't recognize you sooner.
Oh, no worry. Thanks, Scott. I just wanted to comment about the school budgets. I know that everybody is doing their best to bring forth budgets that are manageable, but I would hesitate to put any stress on the school system, because the schools in town are what drive the value in the community. And once you start cutting those budgets, I think you get on a pretty slippery slope. So I think that should be the last resort, is looking to cut school budgets. It's just my opinion.
No, I get you, Tim, on that, because you're right, there is a risk then, and I think that both the superintendent said it and school committee has said it, you start cutting programs,
Right.
you never get them back, or it takes, a decade to get back something you chopped in 1 year. So that's why I'm kind of afraid that's what I see missing in the process is right now, we don't have a conversation between the committees, and maybe there's ideas, or just maybe there's a way that the importance of a program is communicated such that we're able to to represent it better in our deliberations.
Right.
Right, so then we become more of a proponent for and an understanding of, and I'm hoping in that give and take that normal, here's what the principals say they need, and it goes through subcommittees and iterations and it comes down, but maybe that continues to happen as well, and we find other ideas and cross connects, and that's a conversation that happens earlier in the process, rather than two separate processes coming together at the end.
At the end, which is
With no opportunity to change it. Yeah, I guess that's where my mind's at, and so that's something, I don't know if that's something
And
As
as
a
you know,
committee,
go ahead, Tim, I agree with you what you're saying about, the schools and the importance, et cetera, but there is a huge amount of stress that is falling on the town and falling on the residents of the town that are all having to deal with this, and we can't just look and say, let's protect 2/3 of our budget and make sure they don't feel any stress. So, there's a matter of like, that we all own this and everyone's got to be in on this discussion and dealing with what we have to do. So it's just something that just needs to be more visible. We can't keep doing what we're doing. We did it last year, we're doing it this year. The fire department's had the Safer Grant, which we're gonna have to deal with in another 18 months. The police department has been not funding a need for a couple of years now. And, there's gonna be a point where we're gonna have to deal with that. And, we've been doing that kind of pressure, but it's just, we all need to be in this and in this discussion. And it's gonna make some hard choices. There are gonna be some hard decisions that need to be made, that either, yes, we're going to, forget whatever the limit is set up, but yes, taxes are gonna go up by this much every year. Or we're going to have to look at, prioritize the services that we're doing as a town. And, what's more important, and it's gonna require decisions relative across departments. It won't be just within a department, but, we may have to make a decision at some time of, do we need more patrolmen on the police department, or do we expand or grow a program in the school system? And we're gonna have to make those choices. And then part of it is, I think we should be raising Cain about the mandates, that it's like, you must do this, and by the way, we're not funding it.
Right, and that's what the school is up
And
against.
yeah,
We don't have as many mandates townwide,
yeah.
but the schools, there's
Well,
no,
there's, looking at the fire department, there's some things that they have to, provide services at a certain level. And they may be trying to provide that with less staff, kind of thing. So we're all dealing with that. They're dealing with that pressure too.
right,
Police are dealing with that pressure too.
well, we're all under the same
Yep.
budget, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I add something?
oh yeah, please, Tim.
I think the other big piece to this is how much of the budget increases every year are driven by things that are out of anybody's control.
Right.
Health insurance goes up every year. There's nothing anybody can do about that. The school department transportation cost, how many special needs students they have. What's the ratio of students from Northborough and Southborough at the high school? These are all things that nobody has any control over. So you may see a spike in budgetary needs in one cycle, and then you cut things because of costs that are out of control or out of anybody's control, and then those programs are gone and there's no getting them back. And that goes for every department. And that is something that every community in the state is dealing with. So your health insurance goes up, so you cut education. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's costs go up, so either revenue's got to be found, or we're contractually obligated to offer health insurance, so it's not something that we can get out of. So
Yeah, it doesn't, there's no easy.
Yeah.
You just keep cutting and cutting and cutting, and then all of a sudden the only thing the budget's paying for are health insurance, nothing else, and salaries, because you can't afford to do or nobody wants to pay for anything else, or people, maybe don't understand how their tax dollars are being spent or what the impact of cuts have on various departments. It's unfortunate that the economic environment now is that things are expensive. It's just, things are expensive. It's just the reality of the economy right now.
Yeah, that leads me back to, I think, having the ability to committee to committee discussions, right? Because then I would be able to explain special education, transportation was only covered by, say, 80%, or whatever, right? We would have that at our fingertips. We would be in it with them, they'd be in it with us, right? And we would have a better joint understanding, a better ability to say, we've gone through and everything that we can control, we have controlled and adjusted, and what is left is this.
Maybe even once a month, if one person from each committee or board met by Zoom even to
It's-
talk about.
Yeah, I think there's some more formal, because we can attend and we can be part of different bits. Yeah, I wanna think through maybe some of these, and that was gonna be my next question, and then
So
I'll
can I
recognize.
make one point?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't derail anybody, because it sounds like we're on a track to do something practical. But I just wanted to address the point of that there's nothing we can do about some of these fixed costs. One of the things we can do in the present time is make sure we're being responsible and recognizing those liabilities in the future, and that was kind of the point of adding OPEB to our book balance sheets.
Yeah.
And again, one of the burdens that we have is annually has been funding a 10% increase in the retirement assessment from the pension system. So that was the result of that. That's nothing that anybody that's here did today. That's a result of people not contributing a high enough percentage back in the older years. As time's gone on, that percentage rate that employees pay into the pension system to fund their pension has increased over time. Now it's 9% plus 2% of what people make over $30,000. There was a time when it was just 5% that people were paying into it, and most of those people are now gone, and there may not be many survivors that are left that are still collecting pensions that pay that rate into the system. But that liability has existed, and the law that said that we have to be fully funded by 2040 has driven these 10% assessment increases every year.
Yeah.
So once we get there, a lot of us have looked at that and said, let's target our long-term liabilities and address them cohesively together. And then at the end of that, it's like we're funding OPEB, $600,000 a year had been. That's doing the responsible thing now so that we don't create the same problem in 20, 30, 40 years or down the road. So again, that's just a much longer term version of what we're saying with building capacity through staff. And the other thing is addressing building needs, not delaying on doing building projects. We have a big, the Peasley School, which we're building up to and trying to make sure our bond rating stays good for that or now, so that we can prepare for that project. But that could be a realignment of grades into a bigger building and one less town building. That could be a calculus to save money. But we had a long period of time where I think that there was an idea that we could sustain low budget increases. But over that period of time, the only thing we did was Lincoln Street School. And that was relatively small in comparison to we did other projects, but those projects were insignificant compared to the cost of them now. So now that we're now addressing schools that are aged, like Melican Middle School is aged, Peasley School is obviously, there's a feasibility study going on with that project, with that school building. This building was an emergency case, I think, that the town hall locating here to this former school building. This building has a lot of needs that are unaddressed. So there's a lot of questions for these buildings, but making sure we're making responsible choices in the meantime and not just kicking the can that.
Yeah.
So again, I just wanted to address that point, and I know Tim said there's nothing we can do about it, But we are offering, and again, this is kind of in the weeds, but we are gonna offer a high deductible healthcare plan. It's an option that'll be alongside our traditional HMO plans. And then on the frontier of plan design changes where we can go is bringing in deductibles. And what deductibles are is obviously asking the employees to pay more out of pocket alongside their premiums in order to defray the cost of those premiums increasing. So that could be mutually beneficial to the town and the employee in terms of lower premium increases. And again, that 18%, the employees funding 30% this year was impactful to them, so.
Yeah.
We're coming together with them. It may not work out because it's like threading an incredibly difficult needle to thread. Is that we have 8 bargaining groups in Northborough, 5 on the town side, 3 from the schools. I don't know how many are in the town of Southborough in the region.
Probably similar, similar.
Similar costs, but it's a lot, but we're trying to address some of those costs that are really no service enhancement to anybody, but they're just quality of life for employees and the things we're required to offer, so it's actually. Yeah.
That reminds me too, Jason, one of the, I'll get the Susan, one of the articles that will be before us for recommendation is the stabilization fund for
special education.
special education. So there's an example, right? Special education's outside of control. It's spiky, cyclical, all that sort of stuff. So what can we do from a financial perspective is let's establish a stabilization fund that we can smooth the edges on that, right? I guess we can take some bites out of this, but I think I'm still like we need to get together and have
There is,
all together.
I had a friend whose dad describes the situation we're in right now as living life standing at attention. It's threading the needle. It's like we don't have a lot of leeway. We've got to work our thread through this tight spot, and things like establishing that, et cetera, will make sure that we've built things in that'll help us not be in such a tight spot in the future. But that still means we've got to go through this period of living life standing at attention.
Well, and it took very little for the special education cost to go through the roof. It doesn't take that many students to cost as a transportation cost. So when you don't have that, when they graduate and maybe you have a couple years where you don't have it, that's what you just gotta keep paying that. You gotta keep like, because you have to put those acorns away because you don't know. It doesn't take much. And all of a sudden it's like, it's blown up and then the superintendent can't do anything about it, no one can.
Right.
We give Susan a chance. So Susan, go if you would come off mic and give us your thoughts.
Well, I guess I have to start by saying it looks like the rubber's meeting the road here. Finally, we're all having to realize that we're up against some really tough years in the future.
Just do the name and address for us too.
Oh, Susan Sartori, 465 Green Street. Sorry about that, guys. I want to start with Scott. I think Scott's got things going the right way. I do believe we need to sit down with the school department. We had our financial summit this past summer, but it was only the superintendent and one school committee member, and they really didn't make a presentation. I think once town meeting has ended, it would be really good if the finance committees and representation from town and representation from schools, especially the elected people, can hear and understand what's going on. I feel that school committees work really hard to meet the needs of what the parents in the community think the kids need. The municipal side of government really takes care of everybody in the community. All the services that you guys support is for everybody, school children, parents of children, the elderly, the people that are just everybody in town. We all value our educational system. I do believe there are ways to sit down and talk with people to understand better. They right now work off of the parameters that they have class size policies that they have to adhere to. When you're in tough times, sometimes you have to bend a little bit. The other part of it we have to understand is that the sped costs are rising these days too, because doctors are really diagnosing so many children with things like ADHD that never had been before. And the minute they get those diagnoses, they come into the schools and then they need an IEP, which is just more services that have to be given within the school. So it's outside of the realm of the school's responsibility to make the determination. They just have to deliver the services. So I would love it if we could all sit down and talk. I feel the superintendent has been very responsible during the chaotic time in the last 4 years. He brought in very, very reasonable budgets, while the town side, while it had no direction of really a town administrator, bringing in much higher budgets. So I think he's a really reasonable man, and I think that the school committee cares about giving a good education, good education to the kids, but they just need to hear what's going on and what is needed. So I think Scott's going in the right direction. So thanks, Scott.
I agree with that too. That's definitely a step that needs to be taken.
So I think that there's probably a timing opportunity after town meeting, after the next town election. New committees get formed,
Right.
that there's probably an opportunity in the kind of the lull of the mid-year to get together, at least have some conversations.
Yeah.
Between chairs and that sort of things.
Yeah,
And
I would say
think we
this
have
as well,
a-
in terms of, oh, I'm sorry, George.
You have, like, we have a schedule for kind of like a mock town hall or.
Yes,
whatever.
April.
This is an opportunity to explain some of what's happening and what's going forward and the pressures that are there for everybody. So I think
Yeah.
we've really got a plan to use that opportunity to get information out there, to get people thinking about, here's what we're facing, here's why we're facing it, here's what we're doing here, we're in a tight spot, we've got to keep working through this and see if we can avoid, once we get to town meeting, having people be surprised kind of thing.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe it's like we need to be seeing a couple of articles published in the Advocate over the next couple of weeks about,
Yeah,
here's what's happening here, here's what we're doing about it, here's where the pressures are, et cetera, and
Right.
just get the word out.
yeah, absolutely. We have Kaylee from Northborough Media Connection videoing our capital items and having conversations, so we wanted it to be more entertaining than just sitting behind the desk reading your warrant article.
Yeah.
So people can actually see a vehicle and why it needs to be replaced and da. So she's doing a lot of work. And we have to still plan the process for the mock town meeting, because there's a lot that will go into it. We're not going to hit on any of the zoning because they have their own public hearing. So we have to make it concise, but give enough leeway for the public to be able to ask.
And also have them to ask questions
Yeah.
and express their concerns and issues so that they feel heard.
Right, and so we know what to expect and like,
Yes.
we didn't think of that. We need a sufficient answer to be able to, tell the
Yeah,
people at
exactly.
the meeting.
So I think having that that's really a good idea. It's almost critical that we do
Right,
that and do
yeah.
it well.
Yeah, it's practice.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll make it perfect.
Speaking of the schools, I just want to add too that we work with the schools through the joint purchasing arrangement, and the superintendent's been very supportive of working with us as a team. And the superintendent with bargaining with the teachers at Algonquin, where Northborough and Southborough do share the district. So the superintendent did bring in representatives from the town to speak about budgetary climates of both towns when bargaining their contracts at the start of it, whether it was heard or absorbed. I don't know, but they were recognizing what the needs of the communities were through that process. I would say that the superintendent's been great to work with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're fortunate.
I don't wanna leave the impression that.
No, I-
Work with them at all.
That's why I think what's missing is committees talking with each other.
Mhm.
Because I know how well staff talks with their respective committees and amongst each other, and I think a missing component.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
Yeah.
is committees, but because we do, you know, represent some different constituencies. Right, if the school committee might be geared more toward parents and families of school age children. And then other committees might be geared towards other
Mhm.
demographics, so that's what I'm thinking there. All right, cool, but I think upshot all this, the good news, bad news, right, is good news. There's a framework that avoids an override this year.
Bad news
It's
is
not-
we
it's
have
not
many
a
bad
one-time
years ahead of us.
It's not
Yeah.
it's not something that fixes
Right.
it, it's something that we have to continue to work on.
Right.
To bring that in.
Buying time when you have a legislative climate and you have opportunities to get something done at the state house, I mean, so it buys time. Which,
Yeah.
Is pretty great.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is kicking the can, right? I think this is doing what we can now,
Right,
utilizing resources. And
Right.
then knowing that we've got it.
and telling people now, this is what's coming. In another year and in
Yeah.
2 years and 5 years, and if we don't. We need to work together to solve this problem. And, you can't do it. You can't just do it by slashing expenses, it's not the way to go. You can't just do it by just, piling on the taxes, that's not the way to go. And so there's gotta be some thought about this and, making some really thoughtful. And maybe kind of tough decisions about exactly what our priorities are, but you need everybody in the boat to be able to do that,
Right.
so. Yeah.
So let's switch gears
Okay.
and talk about the rest of our business, and additional meetings. I know we will need meeting for, finance department and Jason's.
I'll bring back a comprehensive document with the details that were promised on the situation.
And what I asked Jason to also include in the packet is just the latest memo on the CPC articles and the
Yeah.
CPC requests. And I guess a question before us, and I may have lost Tim, but I want
He's been hopping in and out, I think he gets dropped,
traveling.
but he keeps coming back in, so.
What I wanna see is. In the past, we have had planning director and the chair of the community preservation committee come in and present these items and discuss. So. If we want that to happen, we need to schedule it. If however, we have enough information in the descriptions. That we feel have enough that voter recommendations, we can forego a presentation, and so I'm just kind of looking for a feel on that. On whether we want to schedule a dedicated CPC discussion.
Well, I mean, I'm usually very fine to come with CPC and I don't always love the plan projects. I mean, but I appreciate Jason, you sending this, giving us this afternoon, so I got to read this at home. I actually don't really, I see some good projects in here. And I know that the affordable housing reserve fund, that's a requirement, so they have no projects they're gonna put in there. And kudos to Lori for going this route to try to get something moving with the downtown streetscape. I mean, it's a way to do it with a less I guess a less of a hit, an impact that didn't fly at town meeting. And I think, again, a way to help the school budget is by using some of these funds when it's permissible. I didn't know this was permissible till I read it here, but I think it's a good idea. So I don't personally feel the need to bring them in. I think we're on the right track on this year's plan.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. George, you any feeling one way or the other?
No, I don't think, we know what's coming with CPC, so we don't need. Kind of a dedicated presentation.
Mona, let me ask you, and as the newest member, do you have additional questions about those community preservation projects that you'd want a dedicated presentation or not?
I think not. I'm mostly in the position right now of like continuing to observe and seeing the best actions to take and how to move forward. So I'd rather kind of see how they mostly go about it before I start like making actual or even taking up time to like have them do a presentation without me like knowing exactly what I'm gonna take from it.
Okay, great, thanks for that. And then, what was I gonna say? Oh, so then, another question for the committee, and we don't have Terry, on that bit, and as well as Tim hasn't rejoined yet. We've got a couple of major milestones. Jason, I haven't even like gamed this through with you yet, but there's kind of two schools of thought, and I want to get a feeling for that consensus from the committee. One of the milestones we have to hit is a joint budget hearing with the select board March 23rd. And right up and soon after that, we're going to be seeing deadlines such that reports have to be submitted, so they make the town meeting booklet, to be submitted to printer. And the two philosophies are, do we deliberate and vote our recommendations and we take that as input into the joint budget hearing? So it's almost like we arrive at that open hearing with, okay, this is what appropriations thinks, recommends, and any residents of the open hearing, hear our recommendations as input. The other school of thought is to wait on our recommendations and the receipt of input the other direction. We hear from residents in the open hearing and we use that final bit of information to vote our recommendations. And I can see pros and cons both way. One, delaying our report kind of puts schedule pressure on finalizing our report, right? So there's a little bit there. And I'd like to get your thoughts on one method or the other. Voting our recommendations before the joint budget hearing or immediately thereafter. And by immediate, I mean if it's on a Monday, we'd probably meet that Thursday.
I'd rather get public input first.
Yeah.
As long as we have time, I understand, and I just think I'd rather hear what, they're the people that are paying all the bills, right? And I'd rather hear from the public first.
So George, you're feeling the same way, yeah. Mona, what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel?
I'd go with presenting it before, just because we have been sitting in these meetings with them, getting all the information. We've all been working with them, trying to figure out what's the best route and how to best place the budget. And it could be something that could help the public have a better informed decision process.
Yeah,
Possibly.
and so, given that Louisa had a couple thoughts on either side, now I'm thinking about some way to split the difference.
What if we went through the process, so we have a draft report ready beforehand, but we don't go public with it until we've gone through that hearing and we've gotten the feedback, and then it may be that it's like, yeah, we got the feedback and no, nothing changes, we're done, and we can just approve.
Well, one thing we could do is we could vote the articles in a preliminary vote and have, and go to that joint budget hearing with, here's where our thoughts are, but reserving our ability to, at a meeting right after, to call an official vote or a second vote just to finalize each one article for the report, so that we're giving the public, like, we've heard everything and we've been looking.
And
here's what we think, but what do you think? And maybe some of us might be persuaded to change our minds on an article.
Maybe you could do columns,
So-
draft vote, final,
Right.
so they know it's not final.
Right.
So similar to financial planning.
I was just gonna, I was waiting for Susan to raise her hand.
They voted their recommendations already on the capital articles. They left the door open to change their mind on some of them, you know, if further information is brought forward.
So that's kind of what popped in that there was in some of those, and we might face it too, you know, we're looking at the CPC one, and we're like, oh geez, we should have asked that bit. They've got a couple that there's an opportunity to get more information, more detail, but they went ahead and completed their business in a way.
Well, actually, back to the CPC kind of thing real quickly. I mean, one of the things I have not read through this, but you always worry about okay, here's a capital funded by the CPC, and you know what, behind this is going to increase operating next year by X. And it might be worth getting an answer to those questions, that whether they have a potential impact on operating budget going forward or not.
Yeah, I read, because I've been asking for impact statements every year, and I read it with that in mind, and I don't really see.
You don't see any impact.
I don't see it in here because I mean, the downtown improvement project, I mean, it's just essentially doing something with land that we're already responsible for. And the schools, you know, helping them put ball fields, like it's like I don't see how it's gonna turn into any kind of
It would just be good to know that
costs.
that's the case.
Right,
on these.
debt service, admin fund, housing reserve.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
so
being maintained anyway.
they're being maintained by this, right, so they have that in their budget, and so I was looking for that. And this year I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out as, oh, this is gonna put us on the hook for forever now.
The dog park.
Yeah, we're always gonna have to do it. So yeah, I think that's a great point, but I think this particular year.
It's a pretty short list.
It's a short list, and
It is.
I think these projects are, you know, I don't see anything controversial in them, and I don't see them triggering a new burden on, you know, on my Scott Charpentier's, his shop having to like now pick up this or more for the police. I'm not seeing any,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not seeing that. Cause but I think every year we should
Really be looking.
I think it's great that you gave us this now, and I mean, and maybe we did that every year, so we say, okay, no, we have questions, we need to, but sometimes we can even submit them in writing, right, and read them at a meeting.
Yeah, and I'm just looking to be mindful of folks' time.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Susan, let me give you a chance to fix anything I may have stated incorrectly into the financial planning committee.
Susan Sartori, 465 Green Street. No, you were appropriate in everything that you say. I just wanted to give you guys some feedback that we are also on a learning curve in understanding to ask the questions about the operating and maintenance in future years with the capital projects. And we did ask for the CPC and the ball field that's being done, that the woman that has initiated this and spearheaded it has a local baseball association coming in to help maintain the fields. So there won't be added expenses to the town to keep up those fields. So I thought that might help you a little bit in understanding. And this goes to one of the really interesting conversations that's happening at financial planning right now, is the overlapping of our duties and that kind of thing from appropriations and financial planning. And it probably wouldn't be a bad idea if we all sat down and had a little summit at some point in time and say, what are some of the kinds of questions we should be asking at financial planning to make your job a little bit easier, so that you don't necessarily have to meet with the CPC and you know we've asked about the operating costs. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it might be helpful. The other thing I just want to say, as a member of financial planning, the thing that I see about the CPC is that it has been very helpful. There's a reason that it's there. Things that can't get done in a community, the money has been there. Well, now the money is getting tight. Free cash is going to be tight. I would also like to see us all work a lot closer with that particular group of people. They have to spend it in certain ways, but there might be ways that we can find that are helpful for our own buildings, our own fields, whatever. And instead of just anybody that has an idea, like the planning director has brought the Blake Street in there. I don't know if she ran it through, everybody, but we weren't really aware of it. It would be helpful if there was more communication there because we're going to be short on cash. And they do have a nice little piggy bank to work from to get things done in town. That's all I have to say, guys. Thanks.
Okay, so, we're definitely going to need a meeting to talk about debt and other finance department bits.
Yeah, so again, if you guys want the big picture on debt, it's in those models.
Yeah, it's in the models.
So it's there. The town doesn't really have a lot of unissued debt that's looming or anything. We have there's a fire apparatus and the Beasley School, that's about the only debt, but that's why we see non-excluded debt increasing in the budget. But that'll be shown in the details when I provide that to you folks at the next meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, so we'll need a meeting to cover those details. A meeting to have this preliminary discussion on the warrant articles. And kind of that preliminary consensus vote or whatever we want to call that bit. I think it makes sense, even though we might be able to get that done all in one meeting, to just kind of make sure we've got 2 meetings on the books. So if we look in March, George, I said that you told me only the 13th and 17th.
The 3rd and 17th.
3rd and 17th are not as good, 10th is good for you. So let's definitely, if as long as Jeff and Mona, let's definitely take the 10th.
Alright.
But I'm also tempted to take the 3rd, even if we don't have you. And what I'll get out to the rest of the committee too, because we don't have.
Would it be possible to do it on another night other than?
And actually, and as Thursday's open for you.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
Thursday, so.
So the 3rd would become the 5th, if I'm doing that right.
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to do the 5th because I have a committee meeting I'm on a line with my law school.
Okay.
And
And if we looked.
I can do the 4th, but Wednesdays don't work, it has to be Tuesday or Thursday.
No,
I can do the 4th too.
4th is good, okay. So let's check, other competing schedules we had. Chicken competition tonight.
Yeah, I'm open for the 4th.
You're open for the 4th?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's right now, let's put the 4th and the 10th
Okay.
on the books. The 4th is Wednesday. 10th is that next Tuesday. That gives us.
We'll get in the pipeline for the rooms.
Right, yeah, to make sure there's no conflicts there. And then maybe that week of what would normally be Tuesday, the 17th. George, I know that doesn't work for you, but maybe still that week, maybe that Wednesday or Thursday, that week might be open.
They will both be open, it's just the Tuesdays, so I have a problem.
Great. So that we'll kind of keep that in reserve, knowing that we'd be back 23rd with the select board for a joint budget hearing.
Yeah.
And then probably the 26th to finalize our recommendations
Okay.
and report.
So we'd be looking at the 4th. The 10th,
The 18th or 19th as reserve,
okay,
then definitely back on for the 23rd and the 26th.
okay, yep. Busy March,
the 18th and 19th are both good for me.
Okay.
I can do them too.
And Mona, did any of those dates not work for you? And I can run down it again if you want. And
Does she know she's on mute?
Yes, you're still muted if you're talking, Mara, but you might not be in a position to talk. There she
I'm
goes.
sorry, could you repeat that?
You betcha. So we're looking at the following meeting dates and let me know if these work for you. So it would be Wednesday, the 4th, Tuesday, the 10th, then possibly the 18th or 19th. Those were kind of holding reserve. Then we definitely have joint budget hearing with the select board on the 23rd. And then the 26th. And the 23rd is a Monday. And then the 26th is a Thursday. That would be our final meeting before town meeting.
I should be able to make either of the days. I might not be in person, but I should be able to join online, worst case.
Okay, that's great.
But
Yeah,
I'll try to join in person, definitely. Those are fine for me.
excellent. Okay, so let's work towards that. So that Jason, that gives us a slot for other, the other topics we need to cover and yet give us some room to talk about consensus on the articles and prep for joint budget hearing and then finalize afterwards. Stephanie, the mock town meetings, April 13th
13th, yeah,
at the senior
at
center.
the senior center. Yeah. Yeah,
That's an opportunity for as many of us can make it, not required, but I think it's an opportunity that we
Right.
could hear some good questions and be able to give some good answers too.
and we'll have it videoed, so whoever can't make it.
Yeah.
Residents or
Yeah,
committee members.
I'm gonna send out invites just to save the date of people's calendars.
great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, that'd be great. Susan, you got another comment?
No, I don't think she put her hand down the.
Oh, okay. Might not have just put a hand out, so.
Her arm's getting tired.
That's good, it's not there. All right.
Well, if the 13th is the, April 13th is the mock town meeting.
Mock town meeting, say 13th, yeah.
It's the day that select board meeting would be to set a calendar for 13th, April 13th.
Are you sure?
2 weeks before town meeting.
Oh, okay, wow.
It needs to be posted.
Nice
Yeah.
flying.
Yeah, and I can't remember, I was looking at the calendar with Angie before this meeting too, and it was like. They probably close the warrant.
They're supposed to close it on the 9th,
9th, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and then the 23rd is your meeting.
yeah, so that, I
So
think,
then, yeah, the next date would be setting it.
I think that,
Posting it, I think is the terminology in the calendar that.
Post.
yeah, it would be posted the 2, but so I think those timelines mesh. I think we're in
Yes,
good shape there.
yeah.
Okay. All right, any other items we need to discuss tonight? Oh, I'm ready for someone to make a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, George. This will be our final roll call. Jeff. Aye. George. Aye. Mona.
Aye.
And Scott is an aye. We are adjourned. Make note that. And I'll note it for the minutes. Yeah. That kind of thing was. My pen just went.
Have a
All
good
right.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.